What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Mike Bartner Show. And a lot of shit has happened in the NHL over this past weekend. The New York Rangers first released the letter 2.0, basically saying that they're going through a retool. They're not offering Artemi Panarin an extension. Then on Sunday, Rasmus Andersson was kind of building towards a trade. He, of course, played his final home game against the New York Islanders and was like emotional after, thanking the fans. He gets traded to the Vegas Golden Knights. Kiefer Sherwood, the following day, a little bit more unexpected, gets traded to the San Jose Sharks. Not really unexpected that he got traded now, but the fact that it was the San Jose Sharks was a little bit unexpected. I was on a flight for that. I was in Miami for the national championship game. I'll touch on that at the end, kind of get in my sad boy hours. And yes, since we last recorded the podcast, Broberg signed a 6x8 that I'll touch on. And just recently, Jackson LaCombe got named to Team USA for Seth Jones, which was pretty controversial. I'll speak on it in my thoughts. You probably know my thoughts, but I'm going to defend LaCombe a little bit. So let's get into it. Let's have a show. We're going to start with Rasmus Andersson just because it's the most tangible move. The New York Rangers blowing it up. We're going to spend a lot of time on that. But Andersson right now heading to the Vegas Golden Knights, half retained for Zach Whitecloud, 2027 first round pick, a conditional 2028 second round pick that becomes a 2028 first round pick if Vegas ends up winning the Stanley Cup this year. And Abram Weeb, a prospect that plays for North Dakota, probably like a C plus B minus prospect. Maybe he turns into an NHLer, but not that much of an impact guy. And I posted my trade grades, and I just really wanted to break it down. I'm going to start with the Calgary side of things because they're finally entering this rebuild. They've kind of been wishy-washy about it. Basically, the last 7 months, they initially offered Rasmus Andersson an extension, and you're like, holy shit, if they gave Rasmus Andersson an 8-year deal at $8 million, I would have just completely lost faith in Craig Conroy, Don Maloney. They start out brutal, but then they start winning some games. Then Don Maloney comes out with this famous quote that we need more Kadris, not less Kadris, even though we're 5 or 10 points back of a goddamn playoff spot. So it was like the it's so over, we're so back kind of graph where they would play like shit. Oh, Anderson's for sure getting traded. Then they would have a run and the president would speak on oh, we're still in the mix. But they finally admitted that it just doesn't make sense to re-sign Rasmus Andersson. And they're finally committing, at least for this season and probably next season as well, because I can't imagine, although I'm very high on Zane Parekh, although we'll talk about Whitecloud, a right-handed defenseman that I think is pretty decent. Trading Rasmus Andersson, it's not like you're going to be bringing in guys to kind of replicate that production. This season, for sure gone. Obviously, they were already so far out of the playoff spot. And next year, at the bare minimum, they're also probably going to be a bottom 8 team in the NHL, which I absolutely love. When looking at this return, a lot of people are saying, oh, it might end up being the 30th overall pick and the 62nd overall pick. And that's fair. In terms of the expected value, yeah, Vegas probably won this just because Rasmus Andersson, you know what you're getting, even if it is a 1-year rental. And we'll talk more on the Vegas side of things, but you know you're getting a good player versus Calgary. It is magic beans to a degree, but I just think that the overall direction is what I really care about for the Calgary Flames. The fact that they're admitting we really need to start selling. Back in 2024, they just had so many expiring guys and were playing bad, like Hanifin, like Tanev. They didn't really have a choice. Here, they kind of had a choice because they started to have some young guys that you could maybe justify Andersson kind of being a veteran leader on that team, mentoring Zane Parekh, although in my opinion, he probably would have just got in the way of Zane Parekh in terms of his development. But this was a serious choice, and they ended up making the right decision. And even when talking about late first-round picks, Calgary's kind of been killing it with their late first-round picks. Not saying that these guys are for sure going to be good NHLers, but Colin Potter last year, they got it 32nd overall. That was the Florida pick from the Matthew Tkachuk trade. Of course, they gave up their own pick in that draft because of the Sean Monahan trade, but they got Colin Potter. He's above a point per game right now in NCAA at Arizona State. That's looking like a very good pick. Back in the 2024 draft, I think it was 28th overall. They got Matt Gridden. He has 28 points in 32 games in the AHL. So Calgary's done a pretty good job with their outside of the top 10. They only have have had Zane Parekh in terms of top 10 pick, but they've done a good job identifying these guys that maybe in the case of Gridden and Potter, we were kind of expecting more so for them to go within the top 25. They slide a little bit and they're able to snipe them there. They've also just done good drafting overall. When looking at someone like Ethan Wittenbach at Quinnipiac, he's well above a point per game. He was a 2025 fifth round pick. And Henry Muse, although I think he tore his ACL, he had some season-ending knee injury, unfortunately. He was a third-round pick for them back in 2024. He was great in the OHL last year and had 9 points in 10 games his first year at Michigan. So they've been drafting pretty well. So the fact that they got another late first-round pick, I think that they could either draft there, maybe get another guy like Potter, maybe get someone like Gridden, or maybe just a defense bid and add yet again to their prospect pool, which I think right now, if you're still counting Zane Parekh as a prospect, they might have a top 6 prospect pool just because other guys have graduated this season. Like my Islanders, I think I had them ahead of the Flames, but now that Schaefer graduated, obviously the Islanders fall back. So like they have a really, really good prospect pool, and they have a 2026 first round pick from Vegas, and the 2027 first round pick, and maybe a 2028 first round pick from Vegas. So they're just continuing to accumulate very good prospects. And now that they're selling Erasmus Andersson, they're going to be able to get that true, potentially franchise-changing player, whether it's McKenna, whether it's Stenberg, probably not Verhoff because you already have Zane Parekh, Tynan Lawrence, something like that. Like the thing with Calgary was it was a large, besides Parekh, it was a large quantity over quality again. Even though I like Gridden, even though I like Potter, like those guys are B+, A- prospects. But the next 2 years, because you're willing to sell other core pieces like Rasmus Andersson, you can now get yourselves those true franchise-changing pieces. And honestly, like if they get a Lawrence, Stenberg, or McKenna, and assuming that Parekh pans out like I expect him to, like we saw at the World Juniors, now he's finally getting some game action with the Calgary Wranglers. But they're not set, but you can say, you're probably going to have another year of sucking. You can say, we have our future number 1 forward, hopefully, in one of those 3 guys. We have Zane Parekh, who I still believe can be a franchise defenseman, and we have Dustin Wolf. You have your 3 pillars for the future. You just got to round out the rest. And how do you round out the rest? It's by drafting very well with late first round picks. So in terms of a return, again, it doesn't knock your socks off in terms of the picks, but it's just all about the direction. And even with the other piece that they got in this deal in Zach Whitecloud, I think he's also being forgotten about. Not only is he a right-handed defenseman that has a metric shit ton of games under his belt, his contract is very, very good. He's only making $2.75 million for 3 seasons. So 2 seasons after this, he was having a bit of a down year. He had a minus 6.7 relative expected goals percentage. I promise that's actually the number. I'm not making a 6-7 joke. But the prior 2 seasons, he had a 51.9% expected goals percentage, a 53.1% expected goals percentage, which was pretty solid on the Vegas Golden Knights. He's a 6'2", 210 pound, right-handed defenseman. That does not... I'm not saying he's elite, but that's a somewhat of a rare position in the NHL, where I think that you can, if you throw him with Mackenzie Weegar and boost up his value the rest of this season into next season, you can get another 2nd round pick for Zach Whitecloud. Like you look at the defenseman market right now, just this past most recent summer, 4x4.5s got thrown out to Cody Ceci and Ryan Lindgren. Like you're telling me a team would not give up solid assets for a guy that only has 2 years left at $2.75 million. And also, he's the same age as Rasmus Andersson. It's not even like he's 32, 33 years old. Again, I'm not trying to say talent-wise they're comparable, but he's a valuable asset. Like Rasmus Andersson, we'll talk about the Vegas angle, how they're going to have to re-sign him, how they could make that work, because it is going to be somewhat of an interesting offseason for them. But for the next 2 seasons after, you could argue that you'd rather have Zach Whitecloud at $2.75 million than Rasmus Andersson at $7.58 million. So yeah, I think that's what really takes it over the top, in my opinion, assuming that they're thinking flip with Zach Whitecloud, because again, you do have Zane Parekh within the system. Not saying Whitecloud's going to be stuffing him in terms of like offensive opportunities, but just in terms of ice time, I think you try to do a little flip for Whitecloud the next like couple of months or into next season, and then get a return for him. In terms of other guys, if you're going to continue to think about selling, I think Blake Coleman probably makes the most sense in terms of being next, just because you see somewhat of a comparable player that we're going to talk about in Kiefer Sherwood get moved for 2 second-round picks. Granted, he was an expiring guy at $1.5 million. Coleman at half retained, he's making 4.9. Him at 2.45 for a season and a half. I think that can get a similar return. I think you could maybe be sniffing a first-round pick, again, just because it has that extra season. And Calgary has been willing to do retention. Jacob Markstrom had 2 full seasons at $6 million. They ate 1.9-ish million, so about the same that a Coleman would be. So I think that's definitely the first step when looking at who to move at this year's deadline. Nazem Kadri, again, after the Don Maloney quotes of, we need more Kadris, not less. I think you can wait on that just because, first off, they only have one more retention spot left because Markstrom's still on his older contract with the Calgary Flames and being retained on, and Rasmus Andersson's now being retained on. So they can't retain on both Coleman and Kadri, and it makes more sense to retain on Coleman right now, who has that year and a half left, compared to a Kadri that has 4 years left. I think you can just do that this summer because although Kadri is not having a 35-goal season like he did last year, he still does have 34 points in 45 games. He still would be a second-line center on a lot of teams right now. And with Kadri, maybe, like, I feel if you're trading away Coleman, you're probably just getting picks and prospects. Kadri, there's maybe a situation where you trade him for a young roster player that's also making X amount of money, and there's maybe not as much of a financial hurdle, so you maybe don't have to retain as much. But yeah, I think Coleman is the move right now, just considering those retention spots. And then next summer, there's a team that probably will be desperate enough to acquire a Nazem Kadri, give you a first-round pick or something like that, to take him on fully at $7 million when they can move around money, when they can dump somebody, or just with the salary cap going up $8 to $10 million. They're going to find a way to move off Nazem Kadri, and again, they have more time for him. Blake Coleman, although I don't expect him to fall off a cliff, like, you might not get as much next year when he only has 1 year left at 4.9 compared to, again, 2 runs at $2.45 million. Teams will be salivating for that kind of money because, again, nobody hits the unrestricted free agency market at this point. And when they do, you got to pay a premium. So trading for someone like a Blake Coleman at that cap hit would be really, really nice. But overall for the Calgary Flames, like, I think you got to like it a decent amount just because they're picking a lane. We talked about the Philadelphia Flyers last podcast. It wasn't last year. It was like January 10th or 11th. We talked about them with Dvorak doubling down, doing these like weird moves where they're not fully in on their rebuild. Calgary, although last year it was the worst thing possible that they barely almost made the playoffs. They should have sucked. But now it seems like they're getting back on track and realizing this year is more of an indicator of how bad this team is compared to last year being somewhat in the mix when Dustin Wolf's not carrying the entire team. And yeah, they're fully committing to this rebuild. And thank God. I like Calgary. I do like Calgary, although I got a lot of flack for that Sharon Govich to Foley takes for like a year. I'm rooting for them. Again, they've never picked within the top 3. As ridiculous as that is to sound, I think Sam Bennett, 4th overall, is their highest pick ever. Hopefully that changes this season because that fan base has been through a lot, and not a lot of success has been through that team over the last, basically since I've been alive. Not saying my New York Islanders have been much better, but yeah, it's been rough in Calgary. They're heading in the right direction. Now let's talk about Vegas. It's pretty self-explanatory. What did the Los Angeles Rams GM say? He said, fuck them picks, I think was the direct quote. That's basically how Kelly McCrimmon operates. I made a post for Bleacher Report saying that they've traded all but one first-round pick that they had from 2017 to 2027, that being Trevor Conley when they hosted the draft, so they kind of had to pick and hold on to their first-round pick. But yeah, they're just super aggressive. And when you have someone like Pietrangelo go on LTIR, and I'm not doubting his LTIR, he had serious surgery, and you just got to hope at this point, similarly to a Ryan Ellis, that like his just data life is fine at this point. But yeah, his $8.8 million cap hit goes on LTIR for this season. Rasmus Andersson at $2.275 million for the final 30 games is absolutely insane. I think that Rasmus Andersson, he's good. He's a good top 4 defenseman. Is he a good top pair guy on a contender? Maybe if you throw him with Noah Hannafin because they have prior chemistry, like that's also why you like to steal for Vegas. But I think that his reputation has gotten a little bit too high just because of what he did from 2022 to 2024. Still a good player. I think he can be a number 3 on a Stanley Cup winning team, which is what he's going to have to be. That's what I really just want to hammer home. Like, some people are a little bit too high on Rasmus Andersson, but he's going to fit this role perfectly. He's not going to be deployed in the most difficult minutes like he maybe was in Calgary. He's not going to be playing 24 minutes a night. Like in Calgary, it was really just him and Uyghur, and then fend for yourself. Just go out there, play a shit ton of minutes, play a shit ton of tough minutes, and yeah, you're probably going to struggle a decent amount. But we've seen recently, especially with the Florida Panthers, even Vegas back in 2023, we're seeing these. Although you want that one superstar defenseman like a Cale Makar, we've seen recent Cup winners like the Florida Panthers have this 3-headed monster, Seth Jones, or Brandon Montour in 2024, alongside Gustav Forsling and Aaron Ekblad. Now with Vegas, you got Andersson, you got Hannafin, you got Theodore, and that's maybe what this team was missing. Although Theodore does play on the right side a decent amount, their right side defense was concerning. I think the forward core and the defense core is toe-to-toe with most, basically any team in the entire NHL. You could say Colorado just because the way they're playing right now is so insane. But they're set in terms of that. That was maybe the one thing. They don't have like a true defensive defenseman, like absolute lockdown guy. That's maybe the one thing that they are missing. But I think, again, with their big three and with their overall defense core, it's fine. It's really just going to come down to the goaltending with them. Adin Hill finally returned after Akira Schmid and Carter Hart were just really, really rough. They were able to stay afloat mainly off the back of like OT loser points, but he's allowed 7 goals on 45 shots. It is 2 games back from injury. So it's going to come down to goaltending. Can Adin Hill be solid? Historically, he has been pretty solid. I'm still on the board of them trading for like a Stuart Skinner just in case Adin Hill has a bad playoffs, and every hockey fan on earth wants to see Stuart Skinner versus the Edmonton Oilers in the second round of the playoffs. So maybe that's the one thing that they have to address, but their forward core depth is absolutely off the charts. Defense core now is pretty set. And just when looking at Rasmus Andersson in terms of him potentially re-signing, it's going to be a little bit of a juggle. First, we'll talk about if it is a rental. I really don't care that much, even if it is. Like if you win the Stanley Cup and you give up 2 first-round picks, whatever. It's similarly to the Seth Jones deal. Like that deal might end up poorly just because it might end up worse than we anticipated just because Florida might miss the playoffs this year, but it's still a good deal because they won the Stanley Cup. Like even if it is 2 first-round picks, and even if Vegas sucks in 2028, who gives a shit? And I mean, if you end up losing in the second round and he walks, you only give up a first and a second round pick. Again, 27th overall pick in the 59th. You're not losing sleep over that, especially when this team is as old as it is. Like Andersson, I was looking at it, like obviously Dorofeyev's like the real young piece, but even he's the 2019 draftee. Not saying that's old, but like their young core is like the 2015 drafted guys in Eichel, Hannafin, and Andersson. They're on the younger side of this team at this point. It's guys like Shea Theodore's a year old. Their Stone is 33, 34 years old. Hurdle's getting up there in age. William Karlsson, Saad, Smith. Like this team, realistically, unless they could continuously pull out rabbits out of their ass, like they should only have like three runs left. I don't think I'm being ridiculous. They could still be a playoff team in those 4th or 5th years, but in terms of being contenders, like they don't care about the 2027 draft at this point. Like they'll probably be smart, especially when they start going downhill, and sell off guys and probably win the draft lottery and get first overall picks. Like they're just they operate on such a different level that I'm not concerned when that time finally comes. But in the meantime, you got to be super aggressive. Now, when it comes to him potentially re-signing in Vegas, let me just take a little drink of water. He's definitely going to want to resign because last summer when we were talking about Rasmus Andersson getting traded, we knew that he didn't want to go to Los Angeles Kings, but he wanted to go to the Vegas Golden Knights. He was willing to resign in Vegas if he ended up getting traded. They are going to have to do some stuff this summer. Right now, they have $60.1 million committed to forwards for the 2026-2027 season, 22.4 to defensemen. That's not including Petrangelo's 8.8. I don't think that he's coming back. And 8.25 to goalies, which equals 90.75 committed for the 2026-2027 season. Salary cap should be around $104 to $106 million. But they have some notable free agents. Andersson, obviously, he's going to want, even in Vegas, he's going to want $7.5 to $8 million. I think that's fair. Anywhere else, in Calgary, it probably would have been 8.2. It probably would have been 8.5. Just considering his track record. Yes, you can point to the Hannafin and Theodore deals, but those were signed like years compared to like two to 3 years ago. And the salary cap has obviously risen a decent amount since then. But yeah, so it's going to be a decent price to re-sign him. And more importantly, Dorofeyev is an RFA, and he's only making $1.8 million right now. They also have Saad. They also have Lazan, Riley Smith, and Schmid. So in looking at how they're going to make that work, $16 million, they could just bridge Dorofeyev and get him at like a low cap hit, but you're going to be walking him potentially to unrestricted free agency. If Dorofeyev's on a long-term deal, if I was him, I'm not saying yes to anything below $7 million. On a bridge even, it's going to be like $5.75, $6 million. You just got to hope that Saad and Smith, they took $2 million deals last year. Next year, you say, can you do 1.3? Can you do 1.25? Like, you're not going to get that much on the open market. Riley Smith, you clearly love Vegas. Brandon Saad, you picked us out when you were an unrestricted free agent and got bought out by the St. Louis Blues. But yeah, in terms of them making up the couple of $1 million that they might have to in order to re-sign these guys, William Karlsson's obviously the first name that kind of comes to your mind just because he's been dealing with a lot of injuries this season. He makes $5.9 million next year. You could trade him, get serious assets, like even with those injuries. William Karlsson's still a very good player. You could get some solid picks and solid prospects that you could then flip at the 2027 deadline for a player of William Karlsson's caliber at like $2 to $3 million of a cap hit at half retained. So although he is original misfit, he is a legend, he might be on the chopping block. Braden McNabb has 2 years left at $3.65 million. He's 35 years old, and he has a no trade clause right now, but that opens up to a 10-team no trade clause, so he can get traded to 22 different teams this summer. And Carter Hart, I'm sure if they're regretting Carter Hart's 2-year deal at $2 million, they can maybe move off him next summer, but that's easier said than done. I'm sure that at least half of the league wants absolutely nothing to do with Carter Hart. So I'm sure that they're going to make it work, but they are going to have to sell off somebody. And right now, a betting man would say William Karlsson just makes the most sense, considering he's not been the most available for the Vegas Golden Knights the last couple of years and is an expiring guy. And could get you assets, so as much as it would stink, I think that's probably where Vegas is trending in terms of their decisions. But yeah, I'm sure they'll find a way. I'm sure they'll be in the mix this year in the playoffs, and them at Edmonton. Edmonton's got to respond, and I know that they got Tristan Jarry, but Edmonton's got to make another move as well to kind of keep up. And obviously, then you got to deal with the Central teams, what Minnesota's doing, what Colorado and Dallas is doing. It's a nuclear arms race in the goddamn Western Conference. Meanwhile, the entire Eastern Conference outside of like Tampa Bay and Carolina are goddamn coughing babies. But moving on, sticking in the Western Conference, Kiefer Sherwood's not going to the East. He's sticking in the West and potentially going to a Western Conference playoff team as he was traded to the San Jose Sharks for 2 second-round picks, a 2026 second-round pick and a 2027 second-round pick. Both San Jose's. I thought for like when I saw that, I was like, oh, maybe the 2026 one is some contending team's second-round pick that they have. Nope. It is their own. And for San Jose, like, I get you wanting to reward your team that is far exceeding expectations. Sherwood, I'm not as high on him as a player as others. I think he's a very fun player. The last 2 years, he has been very productive. He has 36 goals, 27 assists, 63 points in 122 games. It's kind of slowed down after a great start to the season. He had 12 goals, 16 points in his first 22 games when he was shooting like 25%. He's going to improve this team a decent amount just because he is a solid middle sixer, and the guy that they're going to take out of the lineup is an objectively bad player, whether it's Barclay Goodrow, whether it's Zach Ostapchuk, Ryan Reeves, or Adam Gaudette. So it's like addition almost by subtraction, getting one of those big negatives out of the lineup. And Sherwood, even if he is just 17 goals, 17 assists kind of pace. That's a big win for the San Jose Sharks. Just where I have question marks about it is obviously Kiefer Sherwood made a lot of sense for a team that was going for it this year at a $1.5 million cap hit. You either could get him at half retained at $750,000 or you didn't need half retention because he's so goddamn cheap. So that was the main appeal. Going to an actual playoff team that was cap tight, that needed the help in the middle six, that needed the scoring, that needed the physicality. San Jose, like, as awesome as it is to reward your guys, again, they deserve some kind of buy. But Sherwood at 1.5, he's not going to move the needle when you're going to be going up against, if you're the 8 seed, the Colorado Avalanche. If you're the 7 seed, the Oilers or the Knights. If you're the 3rd seed in the Pacific, the Oilers or the Knights. Like, they're going to get clapped. Like, I know I've been low on San Jose all season, but even the biggest San Jose head can say, like, come playoff time, it could get ugly just considering the defense core that they have. Their forward depth still isn't that good, and you're going up against, again, if you were in the Eastern Conference, I can maybe justify it a little bit. You could maybe win a round against a Detroit, against a Montreal or something like that. Not disrespecting those teams, but we agree. The West is just on a different level. So, yeah, and I'm not saying that this is going to be a rental, but Sherwood at $1.5 million, awesome, man. Again, Energizer Bunny Wrecking Ball out there, really fun player. But just what scares me is what's going to follow in terms of a contract. Like Sherwood 1.5, Sherwood at 3x, maybe even 4x that cap hit. And he turned 31 in a couple of months, like 2 months to be exact. That's where I have my hesitancy, man. He's getting up there in age. Again, his play style is solely based on physicality and just zipping around there. I don't think that he's going to age that good. Not to compare him. He's not the same player as this guy, but we saw Barkley Goodrow get a long-term extension with the New York Rangers as a very good third liner that did things the right way. And shortly after, it became one of the worst deals in the entire NHL. I'm not saying that's going to be one for one, but just what's the extension going to look like is basically what I'm trying to say. If it's a 3-year deal and you give him $6.5 million, it's an overpay, but at least you can justify it by saying only Celebrini and Smith will be on like long-term deals at that point by the end of that contract. Like Eklund, it would line up with Eklund's. But if you're going to give him 4 or 5 years, which Saravalli came out and said like the reported number that he's looking for is a 5 by 5.5, that would be a disaster, man. That would be pretty goddamn bad if you're paying him until he's 36 years old. And again, as we talk about, yes, the salary cap's going up, or you're paying a guy that's 31 years old. His play is going down. He is regressing in the opposite way. The salary cap progressing, guy's age regressing. So that's just where I get a little bit questionable at this deal. I gave it a B-. If they only sign him to a 3-year deal, maybe they just give up a little bit too much AAV. It goes to a B. It goes to a B+, because I do think Kiefer Sherwood is going to play a big role on this San Jose Sharks team the next couple of years. But in my opinion, the Sharks are far exceeding expectations right now, and I still think that they're 3 years away from actually contending, especially in the Western Conference again, where you had these teams doing a nuclear arms race. Yes, it probably will eventually open up for San Jose, but that's probably not going to happen relatively soon. So I just don't want them to hamper themselves in terms of the long-term salary cap once they're paying Celebrini, Smith, Dickinson, Misa, all those guys, Eklund, then it gets a little bit ugly. Then you might have to dump Kiefer Sherwood, attach a second-round pick to him. He's sinking on your bottom 6. So that's my concern. It's not them giving up 2 second-round picks because, again, they have arguably the best U23 core in the entire NHL. I might be like, oh no, the 44th overall pick. They needed that. That was the missing piece to this rebuild. Obviously not. But I just wish that they used these 2 second-round picks for maybe a piece that's in their mid to late 20s that you could give him that 6-year deal. And I wouldn't go, oh, ew. It's just Sherwood is not the best. If Sherwood was 27 years old, I would like this a lot more. But I've just seen a lot of teams coming out of rebuilds give long-term extensions to these bottom 6 kind of types. And don't get me wrong, Sherwood is a little bit, I'm trying to fix my hair, goddamn, is this kind of unicorn type of player. But again, we've seen this happen with these older guys that start to regress, and it gets decently ugly. But again, it's a fine deal, just not the best use of assets. But I've liked basically all of what Mike Grier has done at this point, so I'm not too concerned in terms of that angle. Moving on to the Vancouver side, yeah, I think that this is a pretty good deal for Vancouver. Those 2 second-round picks, for them, it's the opposite. Yes, you could have got a first-round pick from the Colorado Avalanche or the Dallas Stars or someone like that, a team where their pick for sure would have been after 25th overall. I think you might rather have these 2 second-round picks for Calgary or from San Jose. There's still not a lot to make the playoffs this year. There's 5 teams battling for 3 spots right now. It's San Jose, Seattle, Los Angeles, Nashville, and Utah. If they miss the playoffs, again, if they make the playoffs, their pick automatically goes to whatever, the 16 spots. But if they miss, even if they're the last team to miss in the Western Conference, their second round pick could be 41st overall, just because, yes, they're 9th in the West, but if they were in the Eastern Conference, they'd probably be the 14th worst team, just because the East is much better in terms of the 6 through 16 right now. Obviously, the West top 5 is insane. But yeah, this could be decently high. So you're getting 2 solid second round picks, and Vancouver is a quantity over quality in terms of anything past the top 10 pick. Obviously, they need top 10 picks. They need to stack multiple top 10 picks over these next 3 to 4 years. But you'd probably rather have, again, the 42nd overall pick in the 49th the following year than just say the 30th overall pick. So I really like this for Vancouver. And I talked about it in my trade grades, and there was a lot of pushback from Vancouver Canucks fans. I think Connor Garland should be next. I understand that Connor Garland is beloved by Canucks fans, and I understand their logic by saying that, he should be mentoring this next generation. The problem is when you look at the Vancouver Canucks and what they have of value to trade and how restricted they might be to trade some of their good players, he's the one guy that's not restricted by any trade clauses. You look at it, Philip Hronik, full no move clause. Yes, you would get a haul. You would get the Rasmus Andersson package and maybe even more just because he's locked in at $7.25 million. He has a full no move. Like, he can decide. I'm sure he's not, although he might want to get moved eventually when it gets like really ugly. I'm sure he's not like right now, like trade me wherever. Like, he'd want to go to one certain destination, and you might not get the same value as that. Pettersson and Demko, also full no move clauses. Those guys' trade values have obviously come down a metric shit ton since that 2024 season. Besser and DeBrusk, full no move clause for Besser 4 more years. For DeBrusk, 2 more years. Yes, DeBrusk has a full no move clause for 2 more years. And even after that, it goes down to a 15-team no trade clause. Connor Garland has no trade clause, and he's making 4.9 this year. But after that, once his 6x6 kicks in, it's 3 years of a full no trade. So if you really want to jumpstart this rebuild, as much as you do want Garland to be there to mentor those future guys, shouldn't Pettersson be doing that? Shouldn't Besser? I know Besser did not much defensively, but like Jake DeBrusk, like, you can sign these older veterans, overpay, like a San Jose Sharks did with an Alex Wennberg, to bring in these more so mentors where I think there would be a really big market for Connor Garland, who has that $4.9 million cap hit and then has a 6x6 at 30 years old. And I think that he's going to age very good. So I just don't see it. If Vancouver's going down this rebuild route, his value, and I think he's going to be well worth that contract, but the first 3 to 4 years of that, it's going to be worthless because they're going to be a pretty dog shit team. So I'm not going to hate if they don't trade Connor Garland, but I just think it would be a missed opportunity to really, really to jumpstart this more, because I think that they would get like a Brock Nelson package. I know that he's a winger. I know that he's a little bit undersized, but considering he has that term, I think you would get a first and a very good prospect. So that's my take on the Vancouver, what they should do next. I still really like this in terms of the Kiefer Sherwood trade. But yeah, them and the Flames correctly are deciding sell, please enter this rebuild, especially in a time where there's not a lot of teams that are rebuilding. Like, these are the two sellers right now, in my opinion, got solid deals. Like Chicago, San Jose's buying now. Like, Chicago's coming out of a rebuild. Everybody seemingly is coming out of the rebuild. So it's the right time to enter this, because there's not going to be a ton of competition. Like I always talk about it, the early 2020s, it was war to rebuild. You had San Jose, you had Chicago, you had Montreal, you had Arizona, you had Anaheim, you had Columbus. Like, there were 6 or 7 teams that were just trying to actively suck. That really isn't you have Nashville that is pretty bad, but Barry Trout's like, I ain't selling. I'm trying to win. You have Pittsburgh that we thought were going to be sucking this year, somehow in like a goddamn playoff spot right now. So yeah, for Vancouver, for Calgary, sell. Keep on selling, and the future will be bright. Like right now, again, in the Western Conference, there's 5 just insane teams that aren't going anywhere for the next 3 years. So if you're not in that top tier, and if you're not ascending like a San Jose or Chicago, you probably should be selling. I'm looking at you, Winnipeg. I'm looking at you, St. Louis, and I'm looking at you, Nashville. Let's move on to the New York Rangers. Let's get positive. As the letter came out, retool instead of a rebuild this time around. And yeah, it's obviously nonsense that Drury is the man that's going to be shepherding them through this retool, considering he kind of like put them in the spot, especially in the last year or so, shipping out Trouba, who's now playing very good at Edmonton. Not saying that it was a bad idea to trade him at the time, but yeah, after the last year, Trouba, Kakko, Miller's now playing good in Carolina, bringing in JT Miller on a 6-year deal at $8 million, giving up the 12th overall pick, signing Gavrikov, who actually was a pretty solid signing, but now entering this retool, like, he has made this team old, slow, uninspired, locker room cancer. We already knew going into the season that like they were one of the most shallow teams in the entire NHL. So once Miller and Lafreniere put up like 50-point pace, and then you get hit with Fox and Stark and injuries, it was just fully over. I do appreciate like the transparency of dropping the letter. It is obviously hilarious that like 9 years ago they did the exact same thing and they're already dropping another letter. But I do kind of like that from, if it was a more respected management group than Chris Drury, it'd be pretty cool to just tell the fans that like, and if they, although they did have some success, I can't really hate on them too much. Like they did make 2 Eastern Conference Finals, but in my opinion, that was more Jeff Gordon than Chris Drury. But yeah, this Panarin, I guess it's the Panarin era, I'd say, because obviously he's getting traded now. So the Panarin era, not a complete failure, not close to a success either. But yeah, they're moving on, and I'm kind of gonna run through. I think there's 6 guys. I'm gonna go one by one who I think is most likely to get traded, like what my New York Rangers trade board is, and kind of explain it because I think obviously Fox and Shesterkin, they're safe. They're not going anywhere. You would label it a full rebuild if you were considering trading Fox and Shesterkin. Fox, someone commented it like on my hypothetical trade videos, like Fox would pseudo retire and get traded away from the New York Rangers. Like he's a Rangers lifer. Shesterkin, he's a top 4 goalie in the NHL, no doubt about it. Him, Sorokin, Hellbuck, Vasilevsky, I feel like that's not controversial at all. And yeah, I feel like both of those guys can be pretty elite into their early to mid 30s. I don't see them falling off, especially Adam Fox, who does not rely on any foot speed that's going to be regressing. He's all hockey IQ. But yeah, so I think you hold on to those guys and you just hope the next 2 to 3 seasons you can pick up top 8 picks, get true franchise changing players within the draft. They're on track for that right now, dead last in the Eastern Conference. And with New York, it's a weird blend. Like for other teams, I would maybe advise to just go through a full rebuild at this point, trade Fox, trade Shesterkin. But as much as it pisses me off, as much as this team can continue to fuck it up, be a horrible optics wise, whether it's Dolan, whether it's Drury, like there's always a chance that a star is going to force his way to New York, that they're going to sign a big name in unrestricted free agency. Like the New York Rangers, regardless of how shit it gets all the time, they're always going to be a destination. So that's why I understand them doing the retool compared to the rebuild, not moving off Fox, not moving off Shesterkin, and just hoping that you can do this retool for 2 or 3 years, and then somebody, some elite player just says, I'm done with my current situation. This situation is looking pretty decent. They have some young talent. They still have 2 superstars in terms of defensemen, in terms of a goalie, and I can go there. So I can somewhat get on board with that. Now let's talk about their trade pieces and where I think that what the return would look like and what I think those guys' best spots, best fits would be. Obviously, Artemi Panarin is first, still 19 goals, 56 points in 50 games. He can still be a number 1 winger on like a legit playoff team. You'd obviously need a true number one center if they were going to go win a Stanley Cup. But yeah, I think that this is an interesting situation because obviously he has a full no movement clause. So it could be a situation where similarly to a Tarasenko back in 2024, although again, Panarin's much more talented than Tarasenko was. But Tarasenko basically said, trade me to the Florida Panthers. Oh, do you want to go here? No, trade me to the Florida Panthers. And they only got a 3rd and a 4th round pick instead of if he went to some other team, it probably would have been like a 2nd and a 3rd, a 2nd and a 4th round pick. So from that perspective, we'll see how Panarin handles it. But he could just say like, screw it. Like if you guys aren't giving me a contract extension, I don't want to go anywhere and I'll just walk in free agency like that. That's what I hope that he does because that would fuck them. But that is a possibility. In terms of if he's more open, receptive to a trade, I think the price is a 1st and a very good prospect. We've talked about it a lot. It is unfortunate for the New York Rangers, thank God, that double retention no longer exists. So he's at 11.6. A team's got to find a way, and they could obviously trade out money, but it is going to be a little bit tighter to trade him, considering he's going to have a $5.8 million cap hit. But the ideal spots, let's talk about the ideal spots. The Colorado Avalanche obviously come to mind. There were the reports back in 2019. They offered him like a 14 by 13 deal or something nuts like that. They could offer, they don't have a 2026 first. They don't have a ton of prospects, but a 2027 first, 2028 first, one of those, and maybe a 2nd round pick, and maybe Gavin Brindley, a guy that has NHL minutes, that's a 2023 draftee, and has been decently productive. I think that could make sense. Throw him on a wing with Brock Nelson, and you just have 2 awesome lines, and you're able to move one of your guys on the 2nd line down to the 3rd line, so even that 3rd line really starts clicking. It has been good this season, but that would just really put them over the top in terms of offensive firepower. The Carolina Hurricanes, he would immediately become by far their best offensive player. He's definitely not the best fit in terms of 2-way Rod Brind'Amour style of hockey, but Rod Brind'Amour style of hockey has not worked when you get to those Eastern Conference Finals. You need those top end guys, and that's part of the reason why they brought in Nikolai Ehlers. You would not think that he's a Rod Brind'Amour guy, as a big-time puck possessor, big-time off the rush, bringing the puck in compared to more of a dump and chase. So they're a little bit more malleable. Maybe they're more malleable to an Artemi Panarin. They definitely have the assets to make it happen. Minnesota, similar to Carolina, they need some other guys in the Rangers that we're going to talk about, but they just want to be aggressive. Panarin, Kaprizov on a power play really boost that 2nd line, so you can stack Kaprizov and Boldy and not be as worried about the fall off with a 2nd line if you have Artemi Panarin. Detroit, Kane, reunion makes all the sense in the world. They're safely in a playoff spot right now. Why not? They have a bunch of prospects that they could offer in a 1st round pick this year that's at worst looking like it's going to be like 18th overall or something like that. The Boston Bruins I wrote down as kind of like we talked. They were in it for Rasmus Andersson. Maybe they'll be in it for Artemi Panarin. I think Panarin makes more sense than Andersson. I'm not really that concerned about their defense core. I'm concerned about their offensive firepower. Besides Pasta, besides Geeky, and Geeky even has slowed down recently. So maybe they say our big three. We've talked about it. Their big three is between the ages of 27 and 29. They're not that young. Maybe they just say if we can get Panarin for Fraser Midden, a first and a third round pick, why not? Well, our forward core is maybe Hagens, Dean Letourneau will be really good in 4 to 5 years, but by then, Pasta, McAvoy, and Swayman will be out of their prime. So maybe they think their time is now. And the final team that's always got to be in the mix for these kind of guys, Panthers. If Barkov's not coming back, they might be interested again into some of their other guys, their centers. But I could definitely see Panarin forcing his way to the Florida Panthers, similarly to his Tarasenko. The Russians, they love South Florida. I can attest to that. As a Miami, someone that lived in Miami for a couple of years, went to Miami. And yeah, that would just be very Panthers-y. Like with Brad Marchand last year, they just get the top unrestricted free agent guy and go on to win the Stanley Cup. In terms of teams that don't need him at all, Vegas, Edmonton, Tampa, Dallas. I just don't think that they need like a smaller guy within their forward core. Their forward cores are pretty sad. I think maybe they have some other things, more so two-way guys that would be best to bring in two spots that if they get into a playoff spot, I could maybe see it happening. I would maybe like them to do something aggressive. The Capitals and the Kings have just been so bad recently that you can't justify taking a swing, giving up a first-round pick, giving up a good prospect on an Artemi Panarin because they might have missed the playoffs. But if they get back into a playoff spot, I wouldn't hate the idea of them going for it, considering it's for sure Kopitar's last year. It might be Ovechkin's last year, and just saying, hey, Cap, we're going to go for it. Let's go potentially try to win a Stanley Cup. Washington maybe could go on a run. LA not so much. But those are two spots that maybe dark horse teams if they start to turn around their season. At number 2 on my trade board, Braden Schneider, mainly just because he's a pending restricted free agent. He's 6'3". Well, first off, he's not playing good this year. That's why I want the Rangers to move off him, because it just hasn't worked. Like you thought 2 years ago he could be a serious piece behind Adam Fox. Once Trouba kind of regressed, he'd be your second pair right-handed defenseman. It just hasn't happened, and obviously it hasn't happened with a lot of prospects within the New York Rangers, but he's still 24 years old. He's still 6'3". He's still a right-handed defenseman. He still has a lot of NHL games under the belt. He has shown flashes where you can maybe get something of value, like a young, retooling, a rebuilding team, like maybe San Jose throws a third-round pick in their 12th best prospect your way for Braden Schneider, and you just say, I don't want to give him some kind of 3 by 3.5 that the market would demand me to do. A Calgary, a Nashville, Vancouver, Pittsburgh, just retooling teams that can kind of buy low. I just think that you can't run back Braden Schneider. He's run his course. New York Rangers fans have like completely given up on this guy. And yeah, it's just time to part ways. And it's a guy that you could wait until the offseason, but I just do it now. His cap hit's relatively low right now. And maybe trade him off. Just get rid of him because it hasn't worked here. At number 3, more of a juicy guy where we can talk up a lot of teams. Vincent Trocheck, 32 points in 37 games with 4 years left, $5.625 million. He does have a 12-team no-trade list, but I mean, that'll basically knock off all like the bad teams that he probably wasn't going to go trade it to regardless. That would not be trading for him. I think the Carolina Hurricanes and Minnesota Wild should be all over him when looking at their clear need at second-line center. The Wild right now have like Danilo Europe there. The Carolina Hurricanes have Kakaniemi or Jordan Stoll, or have they been throwing Jarvis? Maybe they have Jarvis playing center right now. Stankoven's been playing a decent amount of center for them, but I think we all agree Trocheck right now would be far better, and it's not a rental. Like those teams like Carolina and Minnesota, they still have a window open for the next 3 to 4 years, so Trocheck having that term would make it a very smart and savvy play by them. The Utah Mammoth, I think, is a dark horse team. Barrett Hayden he's just not a second-line center, and they have Logan Cooley out right now. They want to potentially make the playoffs this season, and then for 3 more seasons while the Caleb Desnoyers is developing. I think that could make a lot of sense. They have first-round picks to give up. I think they have like 3 second-round picks this year as well, and they have potential prospects to trade for this. So I think as a veteran center, that the center play has obviously not been up to snuff for a playoff team in the Western Conference. And yeah, I think especially with him having that term left, it makes a lot of sense. Montreal, Michael Hage might be like a second-line center as soon as next season. He's been so good, so I'm not quite as high on them making that move, but I think that move still could make a lot of sense just because that his been a pressing need for them. We saw with the Dobson trade, we saw with other moves, like they don't really care about first round picks at this point. They're most likely going to make the playoffs this year, and they have most of their young core at the NHL level, so they could trade their sixth best prospect and not lose any sleep. Maybe David Reinbacher in a first round pick or something like that for Trocheck. The Boston Bruins really don't have any sample. Trocheck would immediately be their best center on their entire team. Geeky has been playing wing, I believe, for the most part. So, yeah, he'd be a good fit for there. The Red Wings, Kopp has kind of been playing second-line center right now. He's been fine, actually, but I think we agree that Trocheck's a big-time upgrade. You can move down Kopp, and Marco Kasper's been pretty underwhelming. So those are the teams that I think should definitely be in the mix for Vincent Trocheck. At number 4, Alexis Lafreniere. When looking at him, that 2024 season, he broke out while being stapled next to heart-level Artemi Panarin. Although I did not expect him to regress so much, when he had that season, I'm like, people are like, he's insane. I'm like, dude, he's playing with Artemi Panarin, who had 49 goals, 120 points. Trocheck was point per game. Like, can we relax? And he really relaxed after that season. He's had 27 goals, not 27 points the last 2 years. 27 goals, 46 points, 46 assists, 73 points in 133 games. That is good for 17 goal, 28 assist, 45 point pace across 82 games. So he's just been a mediocre middle six forward the last year and a half. And again, he does not bring anything defensively. That's for sure. I still think that he's young, and because he's a former first round pick, you could get like a second in a solid prospect, like not a solid prospect, like a BB plus prospect, and just get off that contract. Again, similarly to a Braden Schneider, a team that's not too worried about the salary cap right now, that's willing to take somewhat of a risk. And I don't think it's a huge risk because, again, even if Lafreniere stays as a 45-point guy, I'm not saying that contract could be awesome, but by year 5, 6, it wouldn't be the end of the world just because the way the salary cap is rising. So I think you should definitely look at him. I don't think this would be a Buchnevich situation where if he pops off immediately after being traded, I don't think you could be like hindsight 2020. Like Buchnevich had 48 points, 54 games played in the COVID season. So like that one was like, this guy's already a really good player and you're trading him and you're not willing to move out the money to sign him at $5.8 million or bringing in Barclay Goodrow at $3.6 million. So that was just shit. Lafreniere, the last year and a half, if you traded him at the end of last year after one down year and then he broke out, yeah, maybe you shouldn't have done that. You now have 2 seasons of him just being painfully average, where I think you got to consider moving off him. It is a retool, so I understand, like, again, he's still young. He's under contract. He's not as likely as a Panarin or a Trocheck. But again, it might just be time to part ways. Like they should, again, this is why they should just completely clear house and just uproot their goddamn developmental system, because you thought Schneider and Lafreniere were going to be something and they just have not worked out at all. But yeah, again, retooling teams, Nashville, San Jose. San Jose doesn't have to worry about the cap relatively soon. I know I talked about not giving Barclay Goodrow Kiefer Sherwood a long-term contract, but Lafreniere would grow into it somewhat. So I wouldn't hate that. The Penguins, if they're thinking about moving out Rust and Raquel, you bring in Lafreniere to kind of still give Crosby someone to play with and pump up his value. The Anaheim Ducks on the left wing definitely could potentially use a Lafreniere. They have Killorn and Kreider right now. Kreider, I just said that in a very thick accent. Kreider, who are getting up there in age, and even maybe a Chicago. They have a bunch of salary cap space. They don't have a ton of NHL proven wingers. They obviously have Bedard, Nazar, Moore. I think has been playing a little bit on the wing, but he was pegged as more of a center. So that also could make sense for them in terms of a buy low guy that you could immediately plug into a middle six and give you somewhat production. I know the contract isn't great, but you could get some production. Next up, Mika Zibanejad in 5th in terms of this. The reason why he's not higher is not because of his play. He's actually been very good this season. It's because he has a full no movement clause. He has an $8.5 million cap hit. He'll probably wait and see what happens, like not be able to waive relatively soon. Maybe they'll push him out, but like he has time. The Rangers can't really force him just because he has so much term on his contract. And again, he's been good this season. 21 goals, 27 assists, 48 points in 50 games. He really bounced back. He looked like one of the worst contracts in the entire NHL after the start of the 2024-2025 season. But yeah, he's been very productive since. Much like Trocheck, I think teams would be all over him. But I think the Rangers might just, at least right now, hold on to him, not trade him at the deadline. And he just might not be able to waive. He might not want to waive. So that's why he's kind of low, just because he has that trade protection. And the last guy that I definitely don't think is going anywhere, that they're stuck with, JT Miller, $8 million cap hit, 5 years left, is the captain. it has a full no move. Like Zibanejad, there will be calls on Zibanejad. You just got to work out the price, and you got to get him to waive. There should be no calls for JT Miller. Maybe Bill Guerin will call for him just because he loves him so much and took him on Team USA. But he should be a nuclear, like, toxic asset for teams. If teams are thinking properly, you do not want to bring in JT Miller. And again, I don't think that he'd get right now. I don't think he'd get anything from, like, I think you'd have to just literally future considerations. So like if you're the Rangers, I think you just got to hope that he bounces back to some degree. He'll eventually want out at some point, and then you could get something if he bounces back to a 65-point guy. But right now, it's not happening. Right now, he's just been so bad in terms of his on-ice play that you're stuck with them for the foreseeable future. But that's it for the Rangers. I'd trade Panarin. Oh, you got to trade Panarin right now. I'd trade Schneider. I'd move off Trocheck either now or at the deadline. Or not the deadline. I move him now at the deadline or this next summer when teams have more flexibility. Zibanejad and Miller, you just got to kind of wait. If Zibanejad's willing to waive, you look at trading him. Lafreniere, if you think you can turn it around with him, maybe keep him. But why would you have any confidence? He's 24 years old at this point. And they got some decisions to make. But again, they'll probably somehow sign a sick free agent or get some guy to force his way to New York in 4 years. And they'll probably rush their retool again. And then we'll be in the situation. The letter 3.0 will drop. What's it scheduled for now? Let's talk January. Someone put a reminder. January 2035. If there's another letter, we'll do a toast. Next up, Broberg, 6 years, $8 million. Not going to spend too much time on this because it happened like 10 days ago. But I think it's solid. It obviously, it's a little bit scary just because the track record isn't there. 2 years ago, he was barely cracking the Edmonton Oilers goddamn lineup, but he's just been so good in St. Louis. Like, he's 6'3". I tweeted it out. Guys like him don't grow on trees. 6'3", 6'4", amazing, amazing skater where, yes, maybe he isn't going to stay at this level of play. Like, he's been elite. Every analytic suggests that he has been elite since he stepped foot in St. Louis. Maybe that is a little bit fugazi. Maybe that is just the analytics being nice to him. But I just think, considering his age, he's 24, 25 years old, considering the skating ability, he does have some solid skill. And especially the fact that he's improved so much defensively, I think he's going to be at least worth this. Like, I would have wanted an 8x8 that would have got him at 31 and 32 years old at $8 million, which is going to be fucking nothing in 8 years. But I still think that this is solid. Like, if he continues to play like he is this season, he's worth 7.5. He's worth $8 million. Salary cap continues to go up at 24 years old. I think it's going to be a pretty solid deal for the St. Louis Blues. Like, they have a lot going wrong with their team right now. And we might do a different video essay. We might, if they start selling, we'll talk about it a lot more in depth. But Broberg's the one thing that this season you could walk away with and be like, that is objectively a positive. And now you have him locked up. There is some sticker shock. I don't blame people, but just watching him play, and then when you look at the underlying numbers, you're like, this guy, not a unicorn, but he is one of the more rare kind of builds in the NHL in terms of that size, that speed, that I think it's going to be at least a solid deal. And then another left-handed defenseman, that is an analytical darling, Jackson LaCombe, made Team USA. And yeah, like, everybody's going to scream Hudson should be on it. Everybody's going to scream Fox should be on it. I'm not going to go down that route. I agree. Obviously, I agree. No shit. But I like Jackson LaCombe. I feel bad for him because, like, he has been awesome. Similar to Broberg, although it's not like he got traded. It's not like he signed an offer sheet. The last year and a half, he's been a top 25 defenseman in the NHL. And again, Lane Hudson has been the last year. Lane Hudson has been a top 12, top 10 defenseman. But, like, LaCombe has earned it. LaCombe probably should have been. Noah Hannafin made the team, right? LaCombe should have been ahead of goddamn Noah Hannafin. We can all agree on that. Where it shouldn't have. It's weird that they're taking 6 left-handed defensemen and 2 right-handed. I know Sanderson can play the right side, but LaCombe has just been so good the last year and a half. Another guy that signed what some people thought was a head-scratching deal in the moment, and now looks like that's going to be an awesome deal. His 8-year deal at 9 that doesn't even kick in until next season. But yeah, I just think it's really cool that someone like that kind of came out of nowhere, although he was a decently high draft pick. I think he was an early second-round pick back in 2023, 2024. I think I'm going to make a full TikTok video on it. Like, this guy was 3rd or 4th in the Anaheim Ducks future depth chart. Not even right now. He's playing 17 minutes a night. You thought Zellweger, Mityukov, decent drop off to Jackson LaCombe. Like, I did too. And in fairness, I wasn't watching a ton of Anaheim Ducks games back in the 2023, 2024 season. You probably weren't either unless you were an Anaheim Ducks fan. And this guy just really burst onto the scene. I know the stat by heart because I've referenced it so many times. Once Cam Fowler got traded, he had 37 points in 55 games, playing 23, 24 minutes a night on still not that good of a team. Like, Anaheim last year was pretty goddamn bad. It was really just their goaltending that carried them afloat. I'm going to look at what his point total is right now. 31 points this season in 49 games. And I believe that he got off to a very slow start. So let me see what he has in his last. Let's check. Great podcasting right now. 23 points in his last 28 games. Like he, much like Broberg, amazing skater, does everything at a very high level. You want to talk about amazing micro stats? No flaw in this guy's game right now, where I think that he's deserving to make Team USA. It just sucks that the circumstances are where they already have Noah Hannafin. Why, for some reason, they had Seth Jones. Seth Jones actually was somewhat of a valid pick. But, like, they messed up other selections where LaCombe, like, it just stinks to see people like, Jackson LaCombe, what the hell? I don't know. I'm happy that he made it, but it does suck that guys like Lane Hudson and Adam Fox all got snubbed. But now let's end on a positive note, but also a negative note. I went to the Miami game. I spent $3.3 thousand on tickets. Yeah, you heard that right. It was a big financial purchase. Again, I'm not some kind of trust fund kid. Grew up upper middle class, I won't lie. I've been saving up a lot of money by living at home the last couple of years, so I was able to do something like this. It was worth it, man. Even with Miami losing, like, it was truly once in a lifetime experience in Miami. Obviously, I went to University of Miami, so like I stayed with friends. The rest of my expenses were basically nothing, but I go to the game. Before the game, immaculate vibes, just like the anticipation, because everybody thought it was going to be an Indiana blowout. I knew we were going to put up somewhat of a fight. Like, just seeing it swell up in terms of the anticipation. People, by the way, it was like 65-35 Indiana. Indiana travels. They have like the largest alumni base. That's also another misconception. Miami is a relatively small school. It's only like 15,000 people. Indiana's like 45,000. It's a private small school. But yeah, it was a lot of Indiana fans, and it started off brutal, man. The first half was apocalyptically bad. We could not, I think we had like 50 yards at the end of the first half. Indiana was up 10-0, but probably should have been up like 13, 17-0 or something like that. But then we come out for that second half. We get an early touchdown. Fletcher's run was just orgasmic. Like, seeing him just break off a 55-yarder. And then you're like, holy shit, we might actually, like, I don't want to say I gave up after the first half, but I'm like, miracles are going to have to happen. First drive, we score. Then Fletcher scores. Then the blocked punt fucking happens. And I literally, well, first, actually, no, I got to go back. The decision to kick the field goal at 4th and 2 was, 4th and 2, kicking a 55-yarder. It was decently windy. Our kicker sucked. That I can tell you. By the way, I sat with my friend, I won't name him, but back row, just like I did against Tampa Bay. I obviously Instagrammed that out. Hopefully you saw that. So he's not getting the invite for the next time that we have a huge game, unfortunately. Sorry, man. But yeah, so the first half ended with them kicking a 50-yard field goal with the dog shit kicker. Wind was like 15, 20 miles per hour. There was like 30 seconds left still. It wasn't like there was 10 seconds left. That was a horrible call. Mario, we got to get better at that. And also with the block punt, it was 4th and 1. Although it was at their own 25-yard line, I even told my friend, I was like, we got to exert our will at some point. Like, we have this great offensive line. We have Mark Fletcher. Run the fucking ball and get the first down. Block gets punt. Somebody, Alex Bauman, just completely misses his assignment, or just doesn't even, I don't know what the fuck, like, the guy just ran right by him. He put a hand out. It was horrible. But yeah, that gets blocked. They bring it home. But then we have hope again. Then Malachi Tony scores. First Indiana had Malachi Tony scores, but then also Indiana had that insane drive where they get the 4th and 5. Charlie Becker had that back shoulder throw. It was amazing by Mendoza. Mendoza scores that 4th and 5. And like, that's where I say, like, as much as it sucked that Miami lost, and you probably think that, like, oh, you spent that much money, like, that sucked. Like, the fact it was Mendoza, like, he is so fucking likable, where, like, even when that did happen, I was like, holy shit, we probably just lost the game. And again, we'll talk about it later. We had a chance to still win. Like, I was like, that's going to be one of the most iconic college football, just football period plays, like, ever. Mendoza 4th and 5 QB draw, bounces off one defender, like, spins and dives across, and it was on Wesley Bissaint, the same guy that when Miami played Cal last year targeted Fernando Mendoza and gave him like a concussion. Like, I was like, I think I filmed the reaction video that I was like, holy shit, like, that was awesome. Like, it's like something where, like, you just gotta appreciate greatness. Like, I know that it sucked that they ended up losing. And Carson Beck then goes on, has a 2-minute drill to win the game. They're down, 26 to, was it 26 to 20? No, it was 20. Why am I forgetting this? They were down by 6 with the final drive. Jesus. But Carson Beck has a chance. He completely underthrows it. I'm convinced that, he had that shoulder surgery last year. I'm scared, and I saw this on the message board as well, that, it just slowly started to, wither away, and something's fucked up. Because he was throwing bombs to start the season, and then progressively he was not dialing it up as much. So hopefully, nothing wrong with that. But yeah, he throws an interception. And I can't, I wasn't even devastated. I already expected a crying video. The crying video was because that Islanders team was not saying I knew that they were going to fall off the following year, but I knew that, after last year losing to Tampa, going forward, once they returned to regular conferences and divisions, because that was, of course, the COVID year in 2021, I knew that was probably our best shot. And you could say, dude, wasn't it your best shot when Carson Beck for Miami? You might never go back. But college sports are obviously different. They're a lot more, once you build a contender, Mario Cristobal's not going anywhere. He's the one of the few coaches that aren't getting poached. He's Miami through and through. We're going to be back. The Islanders thing was, first off, I was way drunker, just straight up. I intentionally, based on prior experiences, I paced myself for this Miami game. Also, it was a lot more expensive. Fucking beer was 16-ounce beer was $20. So I paced myself. The Islanders game, I was just a mess. And yeah, that truly just felt especially because they were playing Montreal in the final, that felt like our best shot. And obviously, I care about the Islanders more than Miami football, although I really care about Miami football. So yeah, I can't really walk away. If it was versus Ohio State, if it was versus, which Miami is beef with, if it was versus Notre Dame and that happened, if it was versus Florida State and that happened, oh man, I would have been furious. You might have saw the tears. But the fact it was against maybe the most feel-good story of all time college football, I wasn't clapping for them. I soaked it in, then just walked out and was that was a magical season. The other thing, the Islanders the prior season made it to Game 6, then they made it to Game 7 versus Miami that season. Even they were 7-2 after they lost to SMU. They fell to 20th in the rankings. The season was over. The season was fully over. So the fact that in Miami, with their history the last 20 years, you think about Miami, they've been dog shit our entire lives for the most part. I don't remember 2001 when they won the national championship. I don't remember 2002. I wasn't even a Miami fan back then, mind you. I was a Rutgers fan, also going through it. But so yeah, the fact that they were ascending, the Islanders, it was 2019, they sweep the Penguins, then get swept by the Carolina Hurricanes. Okay, Tampa in 2020, you lose in 6 games, but you make the Eastern Conference Finals. 2021, oh, you fucking had them. Yanni Gourde scores 1-0. They lose, and you think they might never get back to it, and they didn't. They missed the playoffs the following year by 20 goddamn points. So for Miami, yes, maybe I'll look back on that in 15 to 20 years. Mario Cristobal never gets back to a semifinal, and I think you should have been a lot more emotional at that. But just considering how unexpected it was, just considering how historic it was for Indiana, I don't regret paying that much to watch them lose, just because it was truly a once-in-a-lifetime memory. Yes, it's 3 months of rent, and that's going to suck. And it was a decent chunk, a noticeable amount of my savings. It was 1,000% worth it. And I'm not telling you to spend $3,000 on tickets. If you have the money, I would recommend those lifelong memories. And that's all life's about, man. So yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this podcast. Hopefully you stuck through to the Miami loss part. But yeah, love you guys. I might be doing some sponsorship ads after that 3.3K expense. Hopefully I can write it off because I made content. That might honestly be what I do. But yeah, I'll be seeing the next one. Love y'all. Peace.